Thank you.
Thank you, Annie and Murphy, and congratulations, Professor Peruta. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Weijia Jiang just might be the busiest journalist in Washington. She certainly is one of the most visible as the senior White House correspondent for CBS News. Weijia reports across all CBS News platforms, including the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell and the CBS News streaming network. She won an Emmy in 2023 for her contributions to CBS Mornings. And I'm proud to be able to boast that Weijia is a Syracuse University graduate. She earned her master's degree here in broadcast journalism in 2006, right here at the Newhouse School. So Weijia, we are excited to welcome you home. She is now in her 6th year as a White House correspondent, having covered both the Trump and Biden administrations. And as you might imagine, she's reported on just about every major story coming out of the nation's capital. She has also reported extensively on increasing violence against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community and the resulting policy changes. Weijia is a 2012 inductee into the Newhouse Professional Gallery and a member of the Asian American Journalists Association. And Weijia will be the first woman of color to serve as president of the White House Correspondents Association when she assumes the role in 2025. We are grateful that she has taken time out of her busy schedule to be with us today, so please join me in welcoming alumna Weijia Jiang.
Wow, I am so thrilled and honored to be here with you today, truly. Last night I actually walked over to Newhouse and roamed the hallways by myself, and I was incredibly inspired by your work and by the stories that I read. And then I ran into Dean Lodato, who was kind enough to give me a tour of all the new studios and equipment that you have access to, and I'm sorry to report that your newsroom that you're going to go to after you graduate is probably not as high-tech and well-equipped. And I was reminded what a gift it is to receive an education from here. Even though my time at SU was relatively short as a graduate student, it has shaped my entire career. And Newhouse continues to offer invaluable support, and for that I am forever grateful. So thank you, Dean Lodato, members of the faculty and staff, distinguished guests, and of course, all of you, the students, for having me back today. Congratulations, class of 2024. I am so, so proud of you. And I, too, want to give a shout out to everybody who made today possible for our graduates, parents, other family members, friends, mentors, professors. Thank you for everything that you have done to support and prepare these grads who are about to take on the world. I applaud your decision to go into the field of communications, and I want to acknowledge that this is a daunting time for our industries. Trust in the media has plummeted to historic lows, and we keep hearing about mass layoffs. And then there is that new technology that threatens to replace even more jobs. But that's always been the case. This was never going to be easy, and you could have run in the other direction. In fact, plenty of your classmates did, but you chose to stay. And that's how I know that you will not only survive the headwinds, but you will thrive despite them. And if there is only one thing you remember from me today, let it be this: we need you now more than ever. All of this, though, is about much more than you. You are going to give a voice to the voiceless. Your work will be vital in maintaining a functioning, healthy democracy, which has recently come under attack. I've spent nearly a decade covering Washington, D.C., and every year the political climate feels more heated, a reflection of our country. The divisions are deep, and so are the resulting wounds. There are two raging international conflicts that have sparked passionate protests here at home. In less than 6 months from the presidential election, people are anxious, wondering if the days that follow will be peaceful. And I don't want to be naive or oversimplify why we are in this state, but I do think a root cause is miscommunication. One of the most important things I learned here at Newhouse was that to be an effective reporter, you have to learn to listen. And that's not to be confused with hearing somebody's voice. It seems so simple, but it takes practice. People used to watch the news for information, and now it is often for confirmation of pre-existing ideas and beliefs. And then when the facts that we present do not line up with those ideas, we are labeled as an enemy. We must facilitate civil discourse so citizens can engage in a meaningful, productive way, so that conflicting ideas do not lead to conflict. And that is where all of you come in. Today, you will leave campus as one of the best trained communicators of your generation. Think about that. Think about the power that you hold. You have the potential to turn misunderstanding into compromise, and we need you now more than ever. I know you probably hear this a lot, but I truly do remember exactly how I felt when I was sitting in your very seats. I was excited but terrified, well prepared but clueless, ready to take on the world and ready to take a nap. I know that it's not an easy program, so please take that nap because you have earned it. I also hope that you bottle up all of the emotions that you are feeling at this moment. In the future, when, not if, when you struggle to find the ground beneath you, how you feel right now will remind you of where you came from. I come from Buchanan, West Virginia, coal country. I was born in Xiamen, China, so you might be wondering, how the hell did she end up in West Virginia? It's okay, I grew up wondering that a lot too. My father went to graduate school at WVU, and he fell in love with the state and the stunning landscape so much that he stayed. In my hometown, population of 5,500, there were 3 Chinese people, me, mom, and dad. So let's just say it wasn't always easy. My parents owned a restaurant, and they worked 15 to 18 hours a day, at least, on their feet. And I carried with me the weight of their sacrifices and hard work, along with the pressure of making the most of the opportunity to immigrate to this amazing country. My dad had one request: become a doctor. It was a respectable profession that offered stability and solid pay, and you got to save lives for a living. But the only problem was I didn't want to be a doctor. When I was 13 years old, I won a national contest to go to Los Angeles for 2 weeks to be a student reporter. I learned about the news industry, but more importantly, I got a glimpse of the world outside of my tiny town, a world that is smaller and accessible because of journalism and storytelling. And ever since, I knew that I wanted to be a correspondent. Still, I soldiered on toward medical school. I finished all my pre-med courses in undergrad and even earned a minor in chemistry. I studied for the MCAT. I felt a sense of duty to fulfill my father's dream. He gave up everything to give me a life in the US, so it was the least that I could do. Only I couldn't. I thought about how awful it would be if I needed medical care, and then I went to a doctor who was simply going through the motions. The thing is, for most immigrants, there's a short list of acceptable careers. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, CEO. Journalist usually doesn't make the cut. You know how this story ends, but I also want you to know that my path was filled with fear of disappointing my family, fear of failure, and countless moments when I was ready to give up, to do something that is on the list. And chances are you will face similar obstacles. But the one thing that never wavered, that put me back on track every single time, was my conviction that I just had to be a reporter. I loved unearthing something new, challenging authority, telling stories of people I met from all facets of life. And now that I'm a mother myself, I understand where my dad was coming from. People in your life want you to be happy. They want what's best for you, but you have to figure out what that is. I'm not here today to tell you that you should know exactly what you want to do with your life or even with your degree, but I urge you, what you should figure out is what drives you, what excites you, what gives you purpose. Simply put, what is it that you love? Let that be your North Star. Because now, on days when I work 15 to 18 hours or more, it doesn't feel like work because it is my passion. And I'm well aware that if I were living in China, I would not have the chance to be the journalist that I am without the fear of the gravest consequences. What we do is a privilege. It is not a crime. The fact that I can do this is my American dream realized. And I hope my father's and my mother's. Whatever your dream is, I wish I had a magic formula to ensure your success. I don't. But I do think there are 3 things that will make you formidable: grit, perspective, and curiosity. Luckily, you already have one down. I know this because of what you have been through and how you have emerged from the other side. When I thought about the time when many of you were starting your college journey, I got chills. I couldn't imagine. Fall 2022, during a time of transition that is already so challenging, you were grappling with a worldwide pandemic. You probably missed your high school graduation. You had to learn how to learn in a remote setting, and you may have lost loved ones, and for that, I am deeply sorry. Nothing was normal. And yet here you are, you made it. And that applies even if you're a grad student, because it applies to all of us. COVID-19 was the toughest story that I have ever reported on. I physically went into work every day while worrying about protecting my young family. The information that we had to gather was helping people make life or death decisions. I lost sleep over all the unanswered questions, and at times I lost hope that things would never improve. But for those of us who completed the assignment, it made us much better reporters. And I imagine at some point you felt robbed of the college experience that you had imagined. My hope is that today you can reflect on everything that you have gained: the ability to adapt to unexpected circumstances, to display courage in the face of hardship, to make the best out of the worst. In a word, grit. You're going to need it, especially as our industry evolves at a rapid pace. Speaking of, when Dean Lodato asked me to speak with you today, I was incredibly nervous. Sure, I write for a living, but writing a news story is very different from this. And then I remembered I could just ask ChatGPT to generate this speech for me. Done and done. As an AI language model, it responded, "I do not possess anecdotes or emotions that college grads can identify with, but how about you did it? Dare to dream, spread your wings and fly." For the record, none of that happened. But if I had asked ChatGPT for help, the speech probably would have been fine. With a short prompt, the app would spit out flowery language, a few pieces of advice, and probably even a joke or two. It would have been fine. It also would have been full of cliches, sterile, and uninspiring. Fine is not good enough. It's not good enough for you today, and it's not good enough for the future audiences and clients that you will serve. That said, we are embarking on a brave new world together. We have legitimate concerns about how technology will impact our work, especially if we don't embrace it as a tool. Eventually, artificial intelligence will be able to create something that is better than fine. But find comfort, like I do, in the first half of its name: artificial. Pick a synonym: insincere, false, phony. There are things that it will never be capable of. I want to share with you one of the most impactful days of my career. 4 months into my first job working as a reporter at WBOC TV on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, my photographer and I were sent to do a door knock. So you're trying to talk to somebody for a story. We were parked outside the home of an Army Command Sergeant who was one of 12 soldiers killed in Baghdad during a Black Hawk helicopter crash. My assignment was to get an interview with a relative. In other words, to convince someone who had just lost somebody that they love to not only talk to a stranger, but to do it with the camera rolling so that thousands of other strangers could watch it later. The house looked empty and dark, but there was a car in the driveway, and I saw a woman in uniform get out. And as we approached her, I was surprised to see another news crew suddenly emerge. There was a veteran reporter next to me, holding a notebook in one hand and a mic flag that read WJZ TV in the other. And I was instantly intimidated. This must have been a huge story if Baltimore was there. That reporter, Richard Scher, started peppering the woman with questions. Is the sergeant's wife inside? Where are the kids? When will they be home? When did they find out about their dad? Can we wait for them inside? No, no comment, and definitely no. She was a military spokesperson whose job it was to deal with the press, in this case, to make us go away. The assumption is that during the darkest times, everybody wants privacy, but one thing I've learned, having done countless door knocks now, is that's not always true. Sometimes people want to talk about it, and they need to talk about it. Of course, I hadn't learned that yet as we were being asked to get off of private property, and could have easily been persuaded to leave. But luckily at Newhouse, I learned something else, which was to keep an eye on the competition. So Richard got back in the van, I got back in mine, and we waited. And soon the sergeant's wife and one of his children came home. They were reluctant to do an interview until Richard said something that I have not forgotten. If you don't tell us about him, then who will? The next thing I knew, we were inside the living room. We learned about how Sergeant Major Roger Haller raised his hand to go to war because he was so affected by September 11th. We heard about what a devoted dad he was, even coaching his kids' Little League teams. And we were inspired when his daughter told us that she found peace knowing that her dad died doing something that he loved. AI is not going to convince people to share memories like that. AI is not going to chase elected leaders down the halls of Congress demanding answers. AI is not going to get a hot tip from a source and then launch an investigation that exposes wrongdoing. We need you to produce authentic, original content. We all crave human connections that are formed with human communication. You are all irreplaceable. After our interview, Richard said, never take no for an answer. Of course, there are times when you need to read the room and no means no, but often in our business, no means try again, ask again, find another way. Overcoming challenges will lead to developing even more grit. I learned something else that day, which is sometimes we catch a really lucky break, but it's up to us to turn that luck into opportunity. Before we left the scene, Richard told me, you know, you're gonna be a star, send me your stuff. And I was thinking, what? I'm probably not gonna do that, but thank you. But my cameraman said, that's Richard Scher. That's Oprah's old anchor, you have to send him your stuff. So every few months, I would send him a story, and he would write back why it was terrible and how I could improve. And little did I know, he was sharing my tapes with his boss, the news director of WJZ. And she contacted me unexpectedly to say, you know, Richard has been showing me your work. Do you want to come in for an interview? And I ended up working there for 4 years. Always, always be prepared as though you are going to be in the right place at the right time. Last year, I traveled to Mexico City to cover President Biden, and when I got on the plane, I saw Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo sitting next to my seat. So for the next 4+ hours, we would be sitting shoulder to shoulder. We could have just exchanged pleasantries and pulled out our Kindles, but I was prepared to talk about her agenda. I knew her goals for making the U.S. more competitive with China, and I knew that she wanted to make broadband, high-speed internet available in every pocket of the corner of this country. I shared how my parents still do not have access to high-speed broadband internet in rural West Virginia, about how I was worried that their community and so many others would get left behind as a result. And by the end of the trip, I had secured an exclusive interview, and it taped and played on our morning show a few months later. And that brings us to perspective. When we talk about the value of diversity, race and gender usually come to mind right away, as they should, because they are such big parts of who we are. But what about socioeconomic diversity? Where you grew up in the country, religion, whether you're single or married, a parent or an animal owner. What are your passions outside of work? All of these things give you a lens with which to see the world. I was so eager to leave West Virginia because I was constantly singled out for being different, and I longed to be like everybody else. How boring. Now I see how powerful my perspective is as an Asian immigrant who grew up in rural America. So I urge you to lean into all the qualities that make you, you. It will make your contributions to any project so much richer. And as a journalist, it will allow you to frame stories in ways that may be overlooked by others. As importantly, pinpoint perspectives that you do not have. Seek out people who are nothing like you and listen to them. In other words, stay curious. A journalist without questions is a surgeon without a scalpel. They are our most powerful tools. Do not limit your curiosity to work, but expand it to understanding how the world operates and its beauty. I want to end by sharing the worst advice I ever got. Let the work speak for itself. Put your head down, work hard, and people will notice. That is not true. Your future bosses and their bosses, the decision makers, are too busy to seek out your work. And how will they know that you are capable and deserving of the opportunities that you want if you don't tell them? You have to be your loudest advocate. For some, I imagine being self-promotional makes you cringe. It is a skill that you have to hone over time, but it is the only way to give your work a voice. So don't underestimate yourself. That said, don't overestimate yourself either. Stay humble. Never stop learning. Graduates, I cannot wait to see everything that you have in store for us. Love your work, but remember that it comes with a profound responsibility to help the public make informed decisions that will shape our country for generations to come. The stakes today could not be higher, and that is why we need you now more than ever. Congratulations, class of 2024. Go Qs.
Thank you, Weijia. At Newhouse, students come first, which means on this momentous day, a student gets the last words.